to Hope Stream. Excited for another motivational interviewing conversation. We
Yay.
were just chatting that like the MI nerds of the world tend to hang out together.
Yes, we do, and we love it.
I know, which I wish I could say I was part of your club. I am definitely not, but you know Dee Dee Stout and some of the other folks I've had
Yeah.
on, and man, if I could just, I love craft and everything, but I think
Mhm.
if I could just magically download a huge amount of, data into a parent's head, it would be motivational interviewing.
That sounds wonderful. You can be an honorary member if you'd like.
Oh, good. Okay. I would love to be an honorary member. That would be very cool. Um, no, but I reached out to you because motivational interviewing continues to be a game changer for the
Mhm.
parents who use it. And also a topic that gets, I think, overlooked sometimes in all of the other, there's so much talk about trauma and there's so much talk about like all these things. And yes, that's all true. But if you want a skill that's actually going to make a difference in your living room tonight,
Mm.
this is what you want to know, right?
Yeah. Yeah, yeah, for sure. I mean, I think of MI as being kind of like the base, like the foundation of how I talk to people, basically. Whether I'm being like a mom at that time or a trainer or a husband or a wife or whatever, I'm always I have this base and it's motivational interviewing. And then if I'm in sessions with clients, for example, then I'll have CBT, for example. So like, but MI is always the base of what I do.
Yeah. It has really helped me so much in all of my
Mm,
interactions with folks. My kids are older and they don't live with me anymore, but
mhm.
even talking on the phone or you're
Yeah.
talking with coworkers or your parents, it's just invaluable to have that, like you said, as that base reference
Yeah.
for how I approach these conversations. And we're going to get into that for sure.
Mhm.
But I would love to know how how did you find this, and what made it something that you were like, "Wow, I'm gonna go full speed ahead into MI?"
Mhm. Well, when I studied psychology at university, I had heard a little of motivational interviewing. And then I moved to Sweden and started working in the criminal justice system. So I worked in a women's prison and was what they call a program leader. So I basically worked with treatment based on MI and CBT. And we also did this with in individual sessions, but also in group. So, I found it here in Sweden, and once I started, I started using it, I realized, "My gosh, this is what I need to be able to continue working for 50 years in this field."
Right.
Since I've learned MI and, teach it, coach it, use it, practice it, I feel like I'm not gonna get burned out. Because
Mm.
I share the responsibility of the change process and that, dance with the other person or the group that I'm working with. That to me has been my game changer.
That is oh gosh, that's something I'd never really thought about, that it really does help you stay in the game.
Yeah,
Because I
yeah.
can't imagine the work that you do and other therapists do all the time. It's just gotta be mentally draining at some point,
Mhm.
I love that this really helps you be able to keep going, which is obviously something parents need too,
Yeah.
right? Because their feet are in the fire 24/7.
Yeah, exactly. And I think too that motivational interviewing is because it's a way of being with someone else. It doesn't really matter who you're with. It's this other person that you have this interaction with. You grow and change with MI. So I mean, I was thinking when I first learned MI, I was, new in a new country, and I was like a girlfriend, and then, now I have, one 19-year-old and one almost 17-year-old, and my parents are the ones that I'm using lots of motivational interviewing with, right? Because they're getting up there in age. So I think that like motivational interviewing is something that helps you grow and grows with you.
Yeah.
There's not a lot of techniques and stuff that do that.
Right. No,
Mhm.
it's so true. I went through the Mayo Clinic has a health and wellness coaching program that I, got certified through, and we spent 3 days in person, this was pre-COVID, learning motivational interviewing, and I just remember my mind was just blown. It
Yeah.
was so different than anything I'd ever really learned before, and I remember thinking at the time, "Man, I wish I had had this when I was in business. This would have been super helpful." Well, when I was in
Yeah.
business negotiating deals and interacting with really difficult clients.
Mhm. Yeah.
So, okay, cool. So you're in Sweden, which I forgot to mention. So
Yeah.
what are you doing in Sweden?
Well, my husband is Swedish, so when I finished university, I thought, "Hey, I'll go hang out with this Swedish guy," and that was 25 years ago.
Wow. So you moved from, I think you said Canada
Yes.
to
I'm
Sweden.
Yeah, I'm born
Did
and
you
raised
just
in Edmonton, so quite near you,
okay.
actually, yeah, on that side of the
Okay.
country.
Yeah. So did you just learn Swedish?
I did,
How
yeah.
d
At
Wow.
first, I drove around in my, blue Honda with, like, a tape back in those days when we had tape, yeah. Anyway, and I would speak Swedish, "Hi, my name is," and then I'd say it in Swedish and stuff, so, I mean, sure, the tape helped me a little bit, but when I came to Sweden, I learned Swedish, for immigrants, and then after 2 years, I got a job, so and it was in the criminal justice system too, so that's kind of when you're forced to speak. That's when you learn
Yeah.
the best.
Well, nothing like just diving in and figuring it out, right?
You might as well.
Yeah.
They're to lose.
I would love to know, this isn't really related to the topic, but what's the youth substance use landscape like in Sweden? Like we're so I think in the US we tend to like we just think the US is the entire world. But I know there's there are kids doing the same kind of shenanigans over there that we've got here. But what does it look like in 2025 with, youth and
Mhm.
substance use there?
Yeah. Well, we've got, pretty much the same things that you have over there. I mean, um, fentanyl perhaps isn't as big as it is over there maybe, but, there's lots of marijuana and there's lots of, like, push, for, well, certain groups to legalize it, for example. Um, Hand sanitizer, drinking hand sanitizer.
Mhm.
Right now, oh, now I'm gonna forget the word, but laughing gas.
Mm.
A really popular one now with the teens.
Mhm.
So yeah, so the same, different
Yeah,
drugs, different things to use, but the function of them is the same.
yeah, and
Yeah.
alcohol, I would imagine
And
is
alcohol, yes.
it's always the number 1, right? It's
Yeah. Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
the
And of course vaping and smoking and like all yeah, for sure.
yeah, yeah. Well, one of the things that when I talk to our parents, I talk about motivational interviewing, and sometimes it's brand new to them. They're like, "What are you talking about? I've never heard of
Mm,
this."
mm,
Some who've been around a little bit longer, "Yeah, I've been trying to use some of that." And when there's 2 barriers that I see, and I'd love
mhm,
to get your thoughts on them to
mhm,
using MI. One is just a state of dysregulation that the parent
mhm,
is so exhausted, so frazzled, so kind of up in their head, and they just don't have the presence of mind, because
mm,
it does take skill for sure
mhm,
to actually, like, use the right phrases or come and maybe you can talk a little bit about this spirit of MI. So
mhm,
that's one. The other barrier that I see is compassion fatigue.
right.
Like, "This kid has me worn down."
Yeah.
I know I should feel compassionate. I know there's a reason why they're doing this. I know that I need to have empathy, and I just can't.
Mm, yeah.
So I would love to have you talk a little bit about what you see with that and maybe some thoughts on how we can
Mm,
combat that. And then I want to dive into some of the more like the actual skills, if
mhm.
that's okay.
Yeah, sounds good. We can start with the compassion fatigue thing because that's something that I was talking about before. Is that when I started to learn motivational interviewing and I practiced it, and because it's like an instrument, right? You have to practice continually to be able to be good at it. And I really noticed like my shoulders dropped from my ears. I felt like okay, the responsibility is not on me alone. Like I am in this partnership or this team with, my daughter or son or with the client or whoever I'm working with. So Honestly, I feel like motivational interviewing is the way that I have been able to continue doing that. So
Mhm.
I'm not sure if it's like a solution to compassion fatigue, but it definitely has helped me not end up with compassion fatigue.
Right,
So
right.
there is a huge, there's a huge, I think there's a huge, like pro to actually using this as a parent even long before, there's a problem like substance or, use or abuse. So that's the first thing I wanna say, and then I think, like, we were talking about that before too, but taking care of yourself is the most important. I referenced in my book, and probably many people have said it, but it's the whole, when you're on a plane, you put the mask on yourself first, and then you put the mask on the people you're helping, and that's what we have to do in order for us to
Yeah.
be our best versions of ourselves and actually role model behavior that we want a teen or a child to do, we actually have to take care of ourselves. So that's
Yep.
super important.
Yep. And in your book, you go into that. I know there's chapters on self-care, which I was so happy to see
Mhm,
because I think without that reminder, it can be easy to
mhm,
try something like MI and then get frustrated because maybe you think, "Oh, it's not working,"
mhm.
when really it's just the fact that you're not in a position where you're able to fully implement it, and like you said, that shared burden of knowing that this isn't all on me. I
Mhm.
I'm using this to really pull information out of my child to understand what they're going through, understand what motivates them,
Yeah.
understand what might, cause them to make some change. And that does feel like like,
Yeah.
okay, we're
Yeah.
doing this together. This isn't me having all the answers
Yeah.
that I am just gonna like instruct you to do.
Yeah, exactly. And because of that partnership or that collaboration, that kind of kicks into like your first like question here is that using your teen as like the expert, like learning from them will also help with the dysregulation. Because how we see like a teen or our children is actually how they will see themselves. So I focus lots in the book and even in motivational interviewing, lots on the positives or focusing on what works. It's very easy to focus on when a teen isn't doing what they're supposed to do. It's like I mean, I have a dog, you have a dog, we have dogs.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
always talk about like the clicking, right? When you're training dogs, you click the behavior you want more of, and you don't click the behavior you
Mm.
want. You know what I mean? So like you gotta and that helps because once you start to click the right behaviors, then you start to see those positive behaviors, and then you can actually comment on those positive behaviors, and the dysregulation will relax because you're not as angry with them with the team.
Yeah. That is such a good analogy. I'd never thought about that, but I do remember trying to train one of my previous dogs with a clicker,
Yeah.
and it was shocking to
Yeah.
see how they actually do respond to that.
Oh, yeah.
It's
Yeah.
amazing. And
Yeah.
we are not comparing kids to dogs. We're just
No, of course not.
the, approach that works. So where would you have a parent start? Imagine you've got a mom or dad with let's call it a 17-year-old who's vaping high
Mm,
potency THC. There's a really bad breakdown of communication in the home.
yeah.
They keep breaking boundaries, like they're bringing the weed into the house or they're not coming home at night
Mhm.
and then there's another situation but sort of that's just our general I would say that's a
Mhm.
very common scenario. Where would
Yeah.
you have a parent start?
So the first thing I would do is, like if we're talking about, for example, somebody doesn't come home in time. Well, there's a time and a place to discuss certain things, like communication. It's important to not only like handle a conversation in the moment, but it's also okay to stand back from that conversation and say, I'm not okay with we had agreed that you were gonna come out at this time and you're not home. We need to like take a pause and then we'll talk about it tomorrow. And then talk about it tomorrow. And that's where you pull the motivational interviewing from. I think to expect ourselves to be completely, I don't know, wonderful all the time is a really high expectation that nobody can live up to. So that's
Yeah.
also with the self-care thing. But one of the things I think is important is to look in the mirror what behaviors what am I doing? And how is the team responding to that behavior? And sometimes it can be enough to stop doing some of the things you're doing to get a change in the team. And what I mean by that is, for example, I mean, an easy example would be like being up and angry and yelling, for example. That will create resistance, anger in the team, which then I have to deal with. So if I could just, take my time out, take my like, I'm very feeling very angry right now, so I'm going to. We'll talk about this tomorrow. Um, you win a lot. Or, for example, one of the things that I talk to a lot when it comes to parenting and vaping is we start to talk all about, well, vaping's bad for you. You know this is bad and all the consequences. And here we go. And we're sitting there having like I don't know, like a seminar with this teen who's like, you don't even know what you're talking about. And that's
Right.
something we also can just stop. They know the negative consequences. We don't need to tell them that. So just like things like that. So, and I think in the book I talk about there are these like hinders or no, not that Swedish word. Like, yeah. Anyway, they're ways that show that you're not listening, even though you think you are.
Yeah.
Warning or, moralizing or just trying to tell them that you tell them what to do.
Yeah.
It doesn't work.
Yeah, that doesn't really work.
No.
We and it's amazing that we continue to try, we become a professor and provide a lecture, and we
Hmm.
just don't understand why our student isn't listening to our
Yeah.
lecture,
Yeah.
why they're not just fascinated with all of the information that we're dumping on them.
Yeah.
So, okay, so we take a pause. They haven't come home. We take a pause the next day. We know we need to address this issue of not coming home on time because it's probably not just a one-time thing. This is probably you know,
Mhm.
something that's happened before. How do we open that conversation?
Right. So one of my favorite strategies in motivational interviewing is explore, offer, explore. And it's kind of like a mini MI conversation, like all wrapped in one. Where the first step, exploring how the team feel, what they think about the situation. So for example, if they didn't come home in time, I would perhaps start with uh, the other day we agreed on what time you would come home. I'm just wondering how is that working for us now? And then you kind of like explore this and talk a little about it and see where the teen's at, right? And then after that, you do all your affirming and listening and not judging and all that. And then you use the explore offer, and that's where it's our turn to tell the teen what we think. And then we come into like the I messages. Like, I was really worried when you didn't come home in time. And I feel disappointed that the agreement that we made wasn't held up. Um, and then the second or the third step is explore again. Like, what does the team think about what I just said? So it's like the
Mhm.
dance, right? You first explore what
Yeah.
they're wondering about, and then you send your message in a respectful way, of course. And then you want to know what they think, what they're going to do with the message that you've given. It sounds complicated, but it's kind of like first, I want to know what the team thinks about what I want to talk about. Then I'll say what I think. And then I'll ask them what they think about what I think. Does that make
Yeah,
sense?
it totally does. Yeah, and I think we often skip that
Yeah.
the first explore. So we just dive straight into,
Yeah. I was
here's
really
the deal.
worried.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And sometimes, and I just know this from other conversations, sometimes that first explore, the first E of the EOE, which I always like a good acronym,
Yeah.
um, that will sometimes almost resolve the whole thing in
Yeah.
itself
Yeah.
because you might say, "Hey, I know that we agreed you're gonna be home. I wondering what happened last night because you were an hour late." And
Yeah.
then they may, because everybody's had time to calm down,
Mhm.
nobody's yelling and screaming, and nobody's under the influence, which is important.
Yeah.
They may tell you, "Oh, mom, Susie's car broke down
Mhm.
and we had to walk and blah, blah, blah." And so if we skip that first
Yeah.
E, we miss a lot of information.
Yeah, exactly. Or they could even say like, mom, I screwed up. I know that I was home late and I know we agreed and I'm just like I feel really bad about it. And then you kind of don't have to say anything that you're disappointed because they already know. So it's
Mhm.
also kind of like it saves the relationship. Like once the once the exploration is finished, you don't have to actually continue.
Yeah.
If you were to continue, then it would almost be like guilt tripping, right? Like, yeah, I was really worried and yeah, tell
Yeah.
tell your husband about that or your partner, right? Or your therapist
Mhm.
or whatever. But the teen already knows. So
Yeah. And a big part of that, and you mentioned this, but I'd like to dig into it a little bit, is actually listening
mhm.
to them. So if you're gonna ask and explore, then you actually have to listen to what they're saying. Otherwise, you might as well not ask them
Yeah,
to tell you anything.
yeah,
What are some tricks for, because we get so in our head, right? And
yeah,
we're just like over here,
mhm,
concocting these amazing responses,
yeah,
and how do we stop that craziness so that we
yeah.
can actually listen to them?
Yeah, it's hard because your emotions are there too, right? But one of the things I remember is there's social skills, like different I'm not sure if I brought it up in my book or not, but anyway, how, to say no and how to be assertive and all of these sorts of social skills training. And there's one for listening. And step one is listen to what the person is saying. Step two, think about what the person is saying. And then I can't remember the others because I just think those first two are awesome. And for
Yeah.
me, that's what I do. I have to turn off and stop thinking because I need to take in what they're saying. I know it
Yes.
sounds really easy, but it's seriously just to give yourself like, what is this? What is this teen? Like, what are they trying to tell me? And like just
Yeah.
taking it in, letting it marinate, and then think about what it means.
Yeah. What are some of the ways that you keep them talking? So maybe they're starting to tell you some stuff and you're like, "Oh, this is
Mhm,
interesting. I
mhm,
didn't know this."
mhm,
How, if we're truly listening and not just like reloading the next
mhm.
conversation in our mind, are there like your go-to phrases or certain things that we can say that keep the conversation going? Because
Yeah.
I have found sometimes I'll be like, "Oh," and then I respond like, "Well, did you know blah, blah, blah," and then it just shuts them down.
Yeah, oh yeah, exactly. I think there's verbal responses just like what you said, "Oh, interesting." Like you can respond, but then stop there, like don't ask a question or try to solve something or whatever. Just like giving those verbal cues of like, "Oh, interesting." That'll keep them talking, right? And you can also
Okay.
use nonverbal cues like nodding your head or like you're doing right now, like
Yeah.
nodding your head or like kind of like, huh, showing that you're thinking, showing that you're trying to understand verbally and nonverbally. Um, those are my tips.
Yeah.
Sometimes the best advice I can give is like literally bite your tongue. Don't do anything. Don't say anything.
I like that one. We call it a lip clip where we
Mhm.
like, the little chip clip that you use on a bag of chips, and
Yes.
sometimes we just need to like, "Mm, I
Yeah,
so badly wanna say something,
yeah,
and I'm not going to."
yeah. We have a
Yeah.
term for that in Swedish. I don't think that I can translate it very well, but it's called okay, when you have to go to the bathroom and like you have to go pee or something, they'll call it here in Swedish pee needy. So like you'll hear a kid say like, "Mommy, mommy, I'm pee needy." And so the little kid will go to the bathroom and then they're not pee needy anymore.
Right.
So in Sweden, we say help needy. It
Oh.
has the same sort of thing, like, I am in this relationship or conversation, and I really wanna help, right? I really need to do it. I'm help needy. And
Yeah.
so when I go and I, like, say to the teen, "Oh, do this, do that," boom, I've fulfilled that need, right? I've gone to the
Right.
bathroom.
Right.
And the only person that, like, benefits from that is me.
Yes.
Do you know what I mean? So
Yes.
I love talking about that because it's like, it's so yeah, when I'm pee needy and I go to the bathroom, the person it benefits the most is me because I don't have to go to the bathroom anymore.
My bladder doesn't hurt anymore.
Exactly. So that's what I try and talk to a lot of parents about as well, is like, what is it that makes you help needy?
Mm,
Because when we get help needy, the only thing we want to do is stop being needy.
yeah,
So that like, find your triggers, what makes you most worried, and then try and like deal with that before you actually get help needy.
right. I love that. That
I
is
know.
so brilliant.
I
It's
wish there
so
was
brilliant.
wish there was better
It's
ways.
like, oh, I'm just over here like, oh, wow, that is really good. Like, help needy. And it does feel so good when we just unload
Yeah,
all of our knowledge, all of our
yeah,
brilliance. Go to listen to this podcast episode, read this
yeah,
article,
yeah,
talk to this person, and we just dump it all. And then we're like, oh, and our kid is over there looking at us like, you are insane.
yeah,
Like
exactly.
you're a crazy person.
Yeah, yeah. So
But
those
we feel better.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we feel much better. We feel much better because we've unloaded, but yeah, no, it's not helping the other person, and I think that's what motivational interviewing has done for me, is taught me, okay, I'm help needy because and especially as a parent, I think we're even way more help needy. But it's taught me to, like, in my brain, I know that I'm not showing compassion to my daughter if I'm help needy. I am showing compassion to myself, but not to
Mhm.
her. So
Right.
there's a time and a place for for both those actions.
Yeah. That's gonna stick in my brain there for a while because I love that one. What about I had a son who was very verbal, very vocal,
Mm,
uh, which had its pluses and minuses. I know a lot of people have kids who are very quiet. They do
yep.
not talk.
Yeah.
They're in their room, isolated, playing video games, or, they're just like getting them to say a word is like pulling teeth.
Yeah.
Oh, can motivational interviewing help with that?
Yeah. The the thing Yeah, because the point of any conversation is we cannot force a person to talk unless they feel comfortable, they're ready, willing, and able to talk to us. So for me, when we have somebody who's not very vocal, just being with them is kind of enough. So if I'm talking with a parent, for example, and their kid is playing a lot and worrying about gaming and whatever, and so let's say, have you gone into the room and hung out while they're gaming? No, I just think they should stop gaming. Okay, but like, that's one thing to do. I mean, I remember doing that with my son. Like, he played a lot of Fortnite when he was younger, and I was like, I guess I gotta learn. Like, if I want to spend time with him, I'm gonna have to learn. So I went in and I was learning, and I was like, oh, why'd you shoot that guy? And why'd you do, And then because of that, he was like, oh, you're showing interest in something that I like. Oh, maybe I won't mind talking to my mom when, I don't want to
Yeah.
talk about something. So I think that's a really important thing. It's like meeting them where they are, um, and providing yourself with opportunities to have a conversation. That's why driving in a car, like taking teens to sports or piano lessons or whatever, best conversations there.
Yeah.
Because you don't have to look at each other. You're just like, facing forward.
Right. Yeah. No, those are like the magic spaces
Mhm.
where it's amazing what they will tell you when you're
Yeah.
side by
Well, when you're
sometimes you
not
might get lost because, you wanna get some extra time in the
Yeah,
car.
exactly. GPS and having Google Maps really sucks at the moment because you get lost is easy.
I know. It's like, "No, I
Well,
need 10 more minutes." Exactly. Well, I appreciate the input on the kind of closed down kid
uh-huh.
because that's not something that I experienced. I had the very verbally explosive kid, and
Mm,
maybe we could talk about that too. What do you do with that? Because I would literally be walking around on eggshells,
yeah.
just wondering, okay, I'm gonna say like, "Hey, could you unload the dishwasher, please?" This is when he was still living at home.
Mhm.
Um, and I never knew what that was gonna turn
Yeah.
into. Or if I was trying to have, a conversation about, "Hey, you haven't been to school for a week, like,
Mm,
what's going on?" And I didn't know any of this. I was completely clueless.
mm,
So I definitely came at it from a very, like, confrontational
yeah,
stance. But what do we do with the more aggressive, outspoken,
mm,
kiddo who's not afraid to tell you exactly how they feel?
mm.
Like, they're the ones that are just, putting it all out there, and it's sort of like an explosion waiting to happen every time.
Yeah. Well, definitely, like, when you have somebody who's, like, verbally aggressive or, like, or even aggressive at all, like, the first thing is your own safety, of course, keep that in mind. But if we're having conversations, like, one of the things I would never like, for example, meeting them at the yelling, for example, that obviously makes for more yelling and a big conflict and stuff, so I would try to, like, kind of bring them down a level, or like set a boundary is, I really, really want to hear what you have to say. Um, right now, I can't hear because it's at a volume that my ears are shutting off at. So
Mm,
let's take this another day, or you're welcome to like tone it down a bit so we can talk. So, using like I think what's important also with MI or what's helped me is like calling it as it is. It's not the type of like counseling style where you try and go around it. It's like, this isn't working for me. Or if I'm walking around on eggshells at home, like how do we want to have this in our house? Like what kind of environment do we want to have? What's important to you? This is important to me. How can we like meet? And
yeah.
having those kinds of conversations are important because then you're not just saying, I'm feeling like I have to walk on eggshells and I don't like that. You can say, like, How do you want it? How do you want me to meet you? This is
Mhm.
what do you think of that? And that's the whole, like, again, explore, offer, explore that you can see happening.
Yeah.
Um,
I like that. I like being able to talk about how do we wanna meet each other in
mhm,
this?
yeah.
Because it feels really respectful, and I
Hmm.
think that's one of the things I really like about Emma is that it does feel very respectful
Yeah.
because you're not lecturing somebody, you're not telling them what to do.
Yeah.
You're really trying to pull out of them
Hmm.
and understand from their internal point of view
Yeah.
wh what they're thinking or what they wanna do.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it feels really hard, I think, at times when, you have a kid, like, if we go back to the kiddo who's vaping, to approach that with curiosity when we so disapprove of it.
Yeah.
It
Exactly.
can feel like I am endorsing it if I'm curious about it. Does that make sense?
It does make sense, and that's the thing, that's so hard with being a parent and using motivational interviewing is really having that balance, like, "Okay, right now, I can't be curious because 'cause I'm pissed off and I can't believe that my kid is throwing their life away by, drinking or vaping or whatever it is." So at that moment, I can't turn on the MI brain. But later on, it can say, I'm really I was a little frustrated before and I wasn't able to listen to you, but now I'm curious, like what does it give you? Like what are the pros? How do you feel when you do it? Um and then of course going over to the other side is like what sorts of what happens when you don't do it and what would happen what would be positive if you don't do it like working through that ambivalence.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The ambivalence, oof.
Yeah.
With teenagers, man, you could just it makes your head spin. You're
Yeah.
like, "Wait a minute. You say you wanna be on the football team, but you're also vaping every day after school. So how
How
does
does
that?"
that well, yeah. That's actually another thing that's really important with motivational interviewing, I haven't touched on it yet. It's this whole idea of supporting autonomy. Autonomy is like a beautiful word for being like self-determinate. I'm the one who wants to decide things. I want to be able to regulate. I want to be able to choose. I want to be able to take responsibility for my actions. That's what I want to be an autonomous person. I don't want my mom and dad to tell me what to do or teachers or whatever. And just with teens, support when we support their autonomy, it helps them to change in much faster. Like it works the best out of any technique, really. And one way you can do this is a lot of people will say like, well, I can't tell my kid like, well, it's your choice if you want to, shoot up or not. And like, as a mother, I can't ever imagine myself saying that. But I could imagine myself saying like, okay, so you've got this choice, right? You're at a crossroads. You can either like continue on this life that you're leading now, or you can make a change. What do you see are the pros and cons of the one of continuing to use? What do you see are the pros and cons of making the change? And then what
Mm,
kind of connect or like summarize all of that, then it's like a little package and you give it back to the teen and you say, like, what do you make of all this? So they might still make the wrong choice, according to us, but we're trying to help them like get their little autonomy, consequence, mind, like muscles working out. And I think that is what I love the most about MI is everybody has a choice. It might not be a choice between awesome choice number 1 and really bad choice number 2, so that it's easy, right? It could be like crappy choice 1 and crappy choice 2. But it's still a choice. And our role as adults is to help teens and children see that these are my choices. There are pros and cons to both. I got to put my big boy pants on, a big girl pants on, and make the best choice and take
mm,
ability for the consequences.
right. That autonomy piece is huge, especially as teens are starting to pull away and they're feeling that, like, I kinda still need my parents for some stuff, but I really don't wanna need
Yeah.
them for some stuff. But the way you just described that, I bet people are gonna be rewinding their little podcast machines right now to how
Mhm.
you kind of framed that up of, "Okay, you've got some choices here.
Mhm.
What is what does this one look like? What does that one look like?" And then not jumping in and saying, "So clearly you need to do this," like, because that's what we tend to do is
Yeah.
well, we may even get to the point where we can, say, "Oh, look at this, look at this."
Mm.
Okay, well, obviously, if you're not an idiot, you're gonna do this one, right?
Mhm.
That's where we
Mhm.
tend to go, but what you did is you handed it back and said,
Exactly.
"What do you make of this?" Which is
Mhm.
a beautiful phrase because it's so open and
Mhm.
it does give them that autonomy and
Right.
agency to say like, "Oh, what am I gonna do with this?"
Yeah. Yeah.
Beautiful, beautiful,
Yeah.
beautiful. I love those words. Um,
'Cause
one
that's actually the whole thing with motivational interviewing is, like, trying to get the other that sounded bad, like, not trying to get, but encouraging the other person to express their own arguments and motivations for change. So, I if a teen says, "Hey, I'm thinking that I'm not gonna be able to continue playing football if I keep, smoking marijuana and, and vaping and stuff because my lungs can't handle it." They'll hear themselves say that, and then they'll start to believe it more because it's their own voice, right? Whereas if I
Yeah.
was to say, "Hey, like, your lungs aren't gonna be able to handle this, like, you're not gonna get your scholarship to the blah, blah."
Right,
It
mom. Yeah.
Um so it's really important to like when we do this whole like supporting autonomy that I can say what are you see are the alternatives here. Oh, I could quit,
Mm,
continue. Okay. If you quit or continue, what are the pros and cons for you? Not what I think would be the
yeah.
pros and cons. And then the little package, summarize and give it back. These are
Yeah.
all of your words. What's the best decision
Yes.
for you?
These are all your words. That's what I did learn the phrase people believe what they hear themselves say,
Yeah.
and I think that's so important, and, it's all good and lovely while Jennifer and I are sitting here on a podcast on a beautiful day, and there's no teenagers around.
Pretty
Like, everything is
calm.
very peaceful, everything is calm, our dogs are happy. Um, and I think it's important what I have learned at least is that the first couple of times that you try to open this door in a new
Mm,
way, they might look at you like a Martian
yeah.
and run because they're like, "Where's my mom? What did you do with her? This is not how we communicate,"
Yeah.
right?
It's properly.
And so you may have to do it multiple times, and even like you said, just say it like it is, like, "I'm trying something new,"
Mhm,
because the way we've been communicating, yelling, screaming, punching
mhm,
holes in the wall, slamming doors, hasn't really worked.
yeah,
So I'm trying something new, and I really am curious about these things, because what we want is we want to try it and have them just open up,
yeah, I
and they tell
know.
us all these things, and then they're gonna pick the right one, and then we're gonna move on.
Yeah. And that's the thing is nothing is a quick fix. I think if any
No.
your listeners know that, like, we wish there was a quick fix for this problem. But there isn't, unfortunately. But what there is because I think this is where the responsibility bit comes in for me. Because if I'm in a twosome, like let's say I'm responsible for 50% of it, so I can do everything that I can. I can ask my open questions. I can support autonomy. I can do explore, offer, explore. I can do all of these things, but that's only 50%. There's another person there. And I'm not responsible for what that other person chooses to do or not. And that is
Yeah.
also about respecting autonomy because I can support it, but I also need to respect it and accept it. And it doesn't matter if, like, you're a 2-year-old or an 80-year-old. Autonomy is one of our basic psychological needs. We need to feel like we can control things, for ourselves and regulate them.
Yeah. And the other thing that I think happens that is so frustrating is you might have a conversation about these 2 different paths. You could go down path A, you could go down path
Mhm,
B. Clearly, there's maybe there's more negatives on path B, and they choose path B.
mhm,
And you're like, "Hold on,
mhm.
can't you see what you just told me path B is worse, and you're still choosing it." And like you just said, we have to respect that
Mhm.
autonomy
Yeah,
as
and I
much as
mean,
it
we can
kills us.
also exactly, and we can also ask that question that you just did. It was perfect. Just say, "Okay, interesting," and like it's like mirroring back to them, like, "Huh, you had these positives here and more negatives here, and you chose the negative, like this particular alternative. Tell me more about your thoughts about that." Like,
Mm,
continue 'cause it's like this muscle, right? Like, if we go to the gym and we wanna, I don't know, have bigger I don't go to the gym, so I don't know these things, but, bigger biceps or whatever, you have to, like, continue working. You don't just do it once and, like, you're super strong, right? Uh,
yeah.
so that's this whole thing with motivational interviewing is we need to, treat it like biceps, working it out, doing it over and over, but we also need to let our children and our teens be able to work their brain biceps.
Yeah. Yeah, they've gotta get their reps in just like us.
Yeah,
I
exactly.
like I like that because, so many times they do make a choice that looks crazy and unhealthy and scary, and the way that you just said that, like, "Oh, that's really interesting because you pointed out so many negatives about that, and that's still what you're gonna do. Tell me more about why you
Yeah,
chose that one."
exactly.
Versus, "You're a moron. I
Yeah,
can't believe you're gonna do that.
yeah,
Just wait till you see where that ends. You're gonna end up in jail." Like,
yeah,
those
yeah,
just shut the conversation down immediately.
exactly. And really, if we're looking for, a sort of reaction like, "Oh my god," that's the question we wanna do. "Tell me more about why you choose that when you see so many negatives." They'll be like,
Yeah.
"But I thought if I said that, you'd shut up and leave."
They're gonna be like, "Dang, my mom got this some ninja skills. Was she listening to the Hope Stream podcast? Did
So
she
I'm
read
like,
that book? That Lighthouse Conversations book? What's going on here? I
"That's
don't
what
approve."
the picture should have been, like ninja. Instead, it's a lighthouse."
Yes, exactly.
But I do think it is a lighthouse because on the book, and that's why I called it Lighthouse Conversations as well, is because I see our role as adults, regardless of if we're parents or teachers or scout leaders or whatever, like um, we're there on this earth to help guide. We don't like take over boats when they come in, right? We're just there to guide them safely, regardless of if it's a stormy sea or if it's calm. We still stand and we still support and we continue to support.
Mm,
Um, it's really important. So, and yeah, that's
yeah.
why. It's called Lighthouse Conversations, being a beacon for teens.
Being a beacon, that is awesome. Well, the last thing I'd love to ask you about, just because it's so common, is school refusal.
Yeah.
So many of our kids refuse to go to school,
Mhm.
or they go to school for a short period of time during the
Mhm.
day and then they leave.
Yeah.
And I wonder if you have any magic that you could give us on this one.
I wish I did. I just actually, my colleague and I wrote a book about MI for teachers in middle school. Unfortunately, it's only in Swedish right now, but that's something that we take up a lot in the book. And that's, yeah,
Wow.
school refusal, or actually going to school, but not going to the classes. Like, yeah.
Yes. Yes.
Um, so, I mean, sure, I don't, again, don't have any quick fixes, but really conversations. I guess one thing, this is what I think about is that in our society, nobody has ever asked children or teens if they actually want to go to school, right?
Correct. Nope.
And yeah, right. We have like, you have to go to school. That's like, whatever. So that's the first thing is like, if we're talking about supporting autonomy, that is not a decision that they've even said yes to. So that's the first thing but fine. They accept, okay, fine, I'm going to go to school, but that doesn't mean they're going to learn anything either. So these are the things I think we need to talk to kids about, like from an early age. Why do you go to school? Why do you think you do this? Like, what's the point of going to school? Why should we learn things? Like working on that motivation right from the start. I think that's
Mm,
the preventative side of it, right? Like trying
yeah.
to get back the like why of going to school. Why is it important? So then fast forward many years, we have people that don't want to go to school. And here's where I come back to the autonomy thing. It's like there's always a choice, even though it doesn't feel like it. It's a choice to go to school and try and learn something, or a choice not to go to school and have all these consequences to it. So there I would do the same thing. Pros and
Mm,
cons of going, pros and cons of not going. Um, if you look, 5 years in advance or forward, like what are the pros and cons of going to school then? And like, like working on short term and long term consequences and stuff. And then the little package, giving it back to them. What do you think?
yeah. And it's, what I experienced with my son, because he absolutely refused to go to school after his sophomore year,
Mm,
was that, if I would have qu if I would have used this with him and really been curious about why he wasn't going to school,
mhm.
I would have realized that he didn't fit in the box that the school was asking him to
Yeah.
fit in.
Yeah.
Like, he would have benefited from a different learning
Yeah.
environment, but like you said, we never asked, we just send them to school. Like,
Yeah.
you just stick them on the bus and you send them to school and you don't really think about it,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
so I can imagine if we did use MI with this topic in particular, you might learn how painful it is for some kids,
Yeah.
especially our ADHD kids,
Yeah.
to go to school and be forced to sit in a chair for 6 or more hours a day.
Yeah. Yeah.
And a lot of our kids are brilliant, and so, like, my son, he could not go to school an entire semester and sit down and take the final and pass it.
Yeah.
But they would fail him because he hadn't shown up.
Yeah.
So, this in particular, I think, is a situation where we would really benefit from listening to them.
Mhm.
"Why is this not working?
Yeah.
What is it about school? Well, it's stupid. When am I ever gonna need to fricking
Yeah.
know US history and
Mhm.
blah, 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 blah." But
Yeah.
continue to elicit from them,
Yeah.
"Tell me more about that. Tell me
Yeah.
more about that."
Yeah,
And then
and not doing this whole like, well, you have to know it if you're gonna do this and that and the other thing. Like if you want to go to university, you gotta know this and like no, exactly. I think that's really important. What are the reasons for them not wanting to go to school? But then also what are the reasons for them? What can school be the stepping stone for? Right? Like,
right.
and those are
Mm,
discussions that I think we can also have about school. It's like, yeah, okay, it does suck that you're forced to do this. I didn't choose it, you didn't choose it. So what can we do with that suckiness now? I can either just go do the motions, get my grades, and then go on and live a wonderful life. Or I can sit here and like buck, right?
Yeah.
What's gonna benefit you the most?
Yeah. And again, be ready for them to choose what you may not want
Yeah,
them to choose, you
yeah.
know? It's hard, it's so hard. Well, this is incredibly helpful.
Well,
I run, don't walk to get Jennifer's book, Lighthouse Conversations, Being a Beacon for Teens. Oh my goodness. What I love too is, you have, like, a website that's a companion, so you've got
yeah,
some sample files of conversations,
yeah,
some cards that they can download
yeah,
to
yeah,
start conversations.
yeah,
Amazing. I love practical stuff like
yeah.
that because it's not helpful to have these theories that live up in our heads. Like, we need the words, like,
Mhm.
give me words.
Yeah,
So you
yeah.
did that, which is amazing.
Oh, thank you.
If you had one last kind of word of wisdom, thought for a parent who might be in the midst of a really difficult time with their kid
Hmm.
right now, what would you say?
I would wanna say, you've got this, and
Mm,
just breathe.
yeah,
Back to the whole, like, take care of yourself. It's a stressful time, and breathe. You've got this.
awesome. Thank you so much.
Thank you.